When a Christian man's trying to gauge whether or not he should pursue a particular woman, he's going to do a lot of things that you would expect, like pray and consult the scriptures and look at the reality of the relationship. However, there are also some really subtle things that men often do when gauging whether or not they should pursue a particular woman. And it's important for women to understand these things because it will give them the ability to respond in the way that they want to respond, to either shut it down quickly or give the man a green light so that he pursues you if that's what you want. Therefore, here are 3 subtle ways that Christian men often gauge women to see if they should pursue her. Number 1, distant observations to see if you're in a relationship and to observe your relationship patterns. Luke 21, 1-2, Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And he saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. And he said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." As Jesus shows us here, you can learn a lot about somebody by observing them from afar, even without talking to them. One of the first things a man is going to want to know about a woman that he's interested in is if she's in a relationship with someone else. And if he doesn't know that information, he may try to gather those facts by observing this woman to see if she's with somebody. Now, you may be thinking, well, how am I going to know if he's observing me from afar? That could be done without me knowing it. And that's absolutely true. But in the next few steps that I'll be talking about throughout this video, you will then know if he was doing what we're talking about in point 1. For example, if he has been observing you from afar, he may come up to you and say something like, "I've seen you volunteering at the small group information table. Do you know of any small groups that might be a good fit for me?" Now, a little statement like this may not seem like anything, and maybe it's not, but it does show that he wasn't just interested in small groups. He's noticed you particularly volunteering at the small group information table. And there are lots of other people around, and he's observed your specific behavior. Again, this could mean nothing. However, it often means that he's been watching you, gauging, perhaps to see if you're in a relationship with anyone else. Number 2, sharing your space to see if you're inviting or not. When Abraham's servant was searching for Isaac's future wife, he took a very simple step. He first tried to occupy space that would lead him to be able to see if Rebecca was open to him or not. Likewise, if a man's socially mature, he's not going to observe you from afar, like we talked about in point 1, and then instantly jump into something more serious or more upfront and ask you out on a date. Now, some men do that, which I think is a mistake socially. Not saying it can't work ever, but normally a woman's going to shut that down. So a socially wise man knows he needs to bridge the gap and create opportunities to see whether or not this woman is open to dialogue with him and to have more interactions. And the first logical step to do that is to get into the same physical location where you're actually near her presence so that something can actually happen. So if a guy seems to always sit in your general area, or seems to always be a few spaces behind you in line, or seems to get out of his car as soon as he sees you get out of your car, these could be little indications he's trying to gauge whether or not he can build a connection with you. And number 3, made up reasons to talk to you. Now, often a man will combine this step with what we just talked about in point 2. For example, if a man sits near you at church, he will then, if he's interested in gauging whether or not he should pursue, he may then come up with a random reason to talk to you that's really not necessary. For example, he could say, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but do you know what passage the sermon is about today?" Now, he could obviously just wait for the sermon to start and listen to what the pastor says. but he's going to be looking for some sort of reason to talk to you. Therefore, if a guy seems to ask you questions that seem rather obvious or random or honestly just a bit weird, it's probably because he just wants to talk to you and doesn't know a better way, and so he's just doing something, which you should commend him for if you're interested in him too. At least he's trying. Now, while Jesus certainly did not have romantic interest in the Samaritan woman that he talks to in John 4, you do see this same tactic of bridging the gap and talking about something at first that is really not what you really want to talk about. The first thing Jesus asked is, give me some water, give me a drink of water. But he wanted to talk to her about the gospel. He bridged the gap with something different. So, what should you do if you feel like a guy is doing something like this and gauging interest to see if he should pursue you? It's helpful to know and to gauge if he's gauging you so you can properly respond. It helps you to shut it down if you don't want this man to pursue you. And the best thing you can do to shut it down quickly is to do the bare minimum to meet the threshold of politeness. We don't want to be rude to people. It's a compliment if he's interested in you. So you just don't want to engage any more than you need to simply be polite. I know a lot of women struggle because they want to show compassion and they want to be nice and they feel bad for a guy, or they just want to be friendly. And I understand that, but if you don't want him to pursue you, don't feed his emotions by giving him extra attention, because that's what he's going to assume, oh, I have a chance because she's giving me extra attention that she wouldn't have to. However, if you do want him to pursue you, or you're at least open to the possibility of getting to know him more, then you should do more than the minimum requirement for politeness. You should engage him back and ask him follow-up questions. If he sits near you and asks you something, you could do the same thing to him next week. Now, there's just so much more I could talk about for this topic, and I actually have written a whole book on it, so I won't go over all that here. If you're interested in learning more about how to be inviting towards a man so that he pursues you, you may want to check out this book called Invite Him, 16 Rules from Ruth to Help Your Future Husband Find You. The women who've read it thus far have been giving me a lot of great feedback, so I think it'll benefit you and you'll enjoy it too if you find yourself in that particular season of life. I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. Hope to see you at the next video. God bless.